Morning, everybody. It's the end of our week here at Reseller Revenue Facebook group. As far as our recordings, we meet Monday through Thursday at 8 a.m. Central Time. And right now, all the recordings are available on Patreon for anybody and also inside the Facebook group. So in January, all of the recordings will be member only, and there'll be more about that posted at the beginning of December. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. And if you do, make sure you hop on the Facebook group. So today we're going to talk about metrics on our business. And I think metrics is a word that we throw around a lot. Like we'll say, oh, that doesn't meet my metrics, or that meets my metrics. But sometimes I think we are, maybe even if we think we have our metrics, lots of times I feel like we're a little loose with our metrics and we make excuses for our metrics maybe. So I wanted to go over that because it's one of the things that is on our 10 ways to be crushing the rest of 2024. And I really want people to be thinking about it. So there's no right or wrong when it comes to your metrics. Whatever you decide for your business is the right way, as long as it's giving you the desired results that you want. So as long as you are getting the results in your business that you want for your, whether it's profit margins or sell-through rates or whatever metric you're choosing, then it's fine. It's right. But we need to understand what those involve, because if you don't understand what they involve, then how do we know that we're meeting it, or it's just term we're throwing out there at that point. So does anybody want to share any metrics that they keep in their business? And then I'm going to go over the couple that I think are important for us all to have. Does anybody have any certain hardcore metrics they keep in their business? Or are we just kind of floating around? If not, I will share. Raise your hand if you want to. I don't want to talk over anybody. So one metric that one thought with metrics that I would like people to have is it needs to be something we have some control over. I think lots of times we don't feel in control of our own business because, well, we can't control sales. We can't control eBay. We can't, all sorts of things that we can't control. However, our metrics we do have control over on. And because, or at least they should be things we have control over. So a metric would not be, hey, I'm going to sell X amount of dollars, because we can't guarantee ourselves that we're going to sell X amount of dollars in a certain time period. However, we can set a metric that we don't pick up items that don't net a certain amount of money. And while that sounds good, and we've all heard it a million times, I feel like myself included, it's super easy to make excuses for ourselves with that particular metric. Either we don't know what an actual net profit is on our item, and we're just kind of using that term, or we think we know, or we make excuses for why we're picking up stuff that doesn't meet the metric at all. So I would say the most common thing I hear people say is, I would like to always make a $20 or sometimes it's $25 net profit per item. It's real common. Some people are up to like 40 and stuff, and that's awesome. Like, good for you. But we need to know what does that look like? So if you're going to say, I'm only picking up items that give me a $20 net profit, you need to know what a $20 net profit looks like. So to me, the easiest way to do that is to use the eBay fee calculator, which we did go over yesterday. Talked about it, but I'm going to show you that today. And so this is ebayfeescalculator.com. If you have not seen that yet, please take note of it. I think most of us do use this tool and we've seen it before, but for anybody new, the ebayfeescalculator.com is something you need to get friendly with. If you're going to do the 1 to 100 exercise, this is what you would use to do that. So if you have, yep, so it does. And so guess what my second one is, Russell? Sell through. So this one's our basic, because if you're in a SKU for SKU category, which is what we're going to talk about next, sell-through rate better be at the top of your list. I totally agree with that. Because if it's not, you're going to get in trouble. So, but this, since we talked about it yesterday, I was going to do first. So if you have a 25, let's say $20, it's easy. It's nice and even. The $20 net profit metric. How much do you think, if we're promoting it 10%, do we need to be able to sell that item for to meet our metric? If we're buying it for, let's say $5, right? That's a pretty common buy cost. So let's say we sold it at, let's say we sold it $30. Say shipping's $8.99, which might be close for a clothing item. We paid $5 for the item. This is shipping charge. This is shipping cost. So here's us making $1 on shipping, which I believe is pretty common. We have a store. We're top rated. 10% promote rate. If yours is more, then you need to consider that. If it's less, we also need to consider that. So this is one you can change. I always leave sales tax at 6%. I realize ours are all different. This is just a real good run of the, an example. So if we're selling an item for $30, and that's the shipping we charge, we only paid $5 for it. So it's 5 into 30, right? And we're promoting it 10%. And the clothing, this is for the clothing category, but our fees are fairly similar, but we can change that right here, whatever category you're selling in. That's not going to get you your $20 profit margin. And I think that, yeah.
This is the calculator I like to use when we were talking yesterday about doing your 1 to 100 exercise
Mhm.
and also doing it with promoted ad rates. Because you could take this if you scroll down, you're at 1688 profit, exactly like it is. If you change your promoted ad rate to 15% or 5%,
Absolutely.
it'll repopulate. So another 5%, you lose $2. So, and if you drop it down to 5%, you're probably gaining $2. Yep. So, you know, at least this way you can kind of go, and that 1894, that's also your $5 coming back to you that you spent, and this is
Correct.
what's left over. So just everybody,
This is your actual, that is correct. That is assuming you're going to get that initial investment back, but this is your net profit after that. So it's like breaking you even by giving your $5 back, and then you get this profit on top of it. But I think a lot of people, when they start out, if you tell them, if they say, I want to make $20 on every item, and you said it's going to sell for 30 and you only pay 5, they're going to think they're going to make $20, and you're not. So this is so helpful. And I have ran this calculator and ran this calculator, especially when I'm dealing with promoted rates, because my category is so saturated. Clothing's very saturated. But even if you told me to put 20 in here, right? Because I don't know your category. I'm fine with that if that's what you need to do to get sales and you know it, but then you need to know your numbers. Because maybe you're only paying a quarter for everything and you can make these numbers work. I don't know. And there's no right or wrong to it, but you need to know in your business. And if you don't, you absolutely need to be pulling up this calculator to run these numbers. So when we said we did a 1 to 100, basically, I would say, you just write down if it sells for this amount and I promote it this amount, this is what I'm going to profit. And that's all you're doing. You're just going down. Some people do, 5, 10, 15, do it on the 5. Some people do $1 through $100. You can do it however you want to do it, but we need to be working these numbers. And of course you would add in what you charge for shipping and what it costs for you for shipping. And you would add in your category, you'd put your numbers in there. However you decide to do it, if you're new, this is an amazing tool. And I wish I'd found it sooner because I really didn't have any idea. I thought I knew. And if you would have told me you're going to go sell that bracelet for $30 and you paid 5 for it, in my head, there'd be no way I wouldn't be profiting $20. And I was wrong. So this is how I would do it. And then it breaks it down for you here at the bottom. Yeah, Russell.
I am fine. How are
Oh,
you?
it was Harry. Sorry, hang on. Thought it was Russell talking to me. It was Harry talking on the phone. It tells you what your final value rate is. So if you're in a category that the final rate value is higher, which it will calculate for you if you change the category, but it breaks it all down here, which I really like. So basically, if you're doing 10% in this particular category, in this scenario, the final value fee is not that much higher than what you're paying for promoted. So it's doubling your fees basically. So I would absolutely be running this calculator. Super helpful tool. Yes.
I was just gonna say, and then obviously if you change your promoted listing rate on here to 0 because you don't promote anything, that'll give you your new profit, which is going to be 20.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's how you meet your 20. However, unfortunately, my very unpopular opinion is Unless you're selling one-off items that are super rare and people are searching exactly for your item, it's very hard on eBay anymore not to promote something. And it's going to vary in your category. You are the one that has to decide what works for you in your category, in your situation. But it's very hard to make it work without it completely anymore, in my opinion. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but it is what it is. So,
Carrie,
yes, ma'am.
I'm here on that website, and
Mhm.
an interesting thing, if other people want to try this, is I this year, I don't remember exactly when, but sometime this year, I decided I was never going to list another thing under $20. Which sounds stupid, but it was kind of a big deal for me because I was realizing as a lot of my things were like $12, $15 I was listing. So on this thing, I put $19.95 as my sold price, and I put like my shipping charge, my item cost, my shipping cost, my seller level. I filled in everything, and then it gave me my total profit at the bottom there in the green. And then I went back and I switched $19.95 to $29.95, but left everything else the same. And then it gave me a different, total profit amount, obviously. So if everybody is similar to me, where your shipping rates are the same, you promote about the same for most things, everything else is about the same, your item cost runs about the same, your cost of goods, then play around with that sold price part and leave the rest of it the same. And it's pretty fun to see what the numbers are.
Yeah, and it's the same as changing the number for your item costs too. It's very eye-opening changing that number around,
But
depending on
leaving
how you're
everything else.
sourcing.
Yeah.
And leaving everything else. That's correct. We hear a lot of people talk about the 8 into 30. Boy, 8 into 30 gets rough.
Yeah.
8 into 30 gets tough, and people think it sounds really good, but run these numbers. 8 into 30 gets tight. And so it's just really eye-opening. Even if you're a seasoned seller and you've been doing this for a while, if you're having trouble where you're not satisfied with your own numbers, run this calculator. Do the 1 to 100. Very eye-opening. Harry said one specific metric he has is only pick up Polo, Bills, Khaki, and a few other brand of pants that are under $4 because he sells those between 20 and 30 and averages a $15 profit. And that's fine. Like I said, zero right or wrong with this. I just want you guys to have a really awesome handle on your two metrics I'm going to talk about. So that's one metric that I talk about. Yeah.
Can you also, for the newer people maybe on the call, define what you mean by your metrics? Kind of expand that a little bit more.
Well, today I'm just talking about these two metrics for the most part, and that would be
Right.
how much. So it can be anything, but we often talk about I'm only going to pick up items that I think I'm going to list for X amount
Meet my metrics.
that meet my metrics. That's correct. So we use that word a lot. Very good, Becky. Sometimes I just put things. But when we talk about meeting our metrics, we mean like I'm only going to pick up items that I think I can list for this much. But if you're going to use the word list for this much, then you better know what your net profit is. So I really prefer people to say, I only pick up things that are going to profit me XYZ. Because you can list it for every you want, but if you're promoting it 40%, it's not going to matter, right? So net profits, we talk a lot about net profit numbers. I don't like the listing so much unless you're like Harry knows, okay, well, I know I'm going to sell between 20, 30. He's done these numbers. He knows that profit is in his $15. So unless you know that, let's talk about net profit, unless you brand it and you have a good handle on it. So, and maybe, I'd love to see everybody do this exercise and report back. Like, are you where you think you are? Are you where you want to be? Because also on top of that, that's correct, Russell. Because once you get where you have the same experience with the same niche, with the same items, you become really familiar with those items. So you can make more specific metrics as you go because you have more experience. But when you're starting out, I think just starting off saying, hey, I'm only going to pick up items, I'm going to net profit $10 on, $20 on, 30, whatever your point is a really good place to start. And it will make you light years ahead in your business from people that don't do this and don't have a good grasp on your numbers. And then when I talk about other number formulas and I talk about other more advanced number things, it will make so much more sense to you if you have a good handle on this base number. In my opinion, it just makes life easier. And if we're running businesses, we absolutely need to know our numbers. So the other metric, as Russell brought up, is sell-through rate. We have individual item sell-through rate and we have our store sell-through rate. So they're a little bit different, but basically the same. there's a big, long, intricate formula to calculate exactly, because if we just do solds versus actives, it does include our returns and our cancellations. However, you get a really good idea just using those numbers, right? I mean, it's close enough to know what ballpark we're in. So if anybody would like to do the intricate formula and want to explain it to everybody, I'm all up for it, but I'm going to just show the easy one because that's what I use. So basically it's absolutely. So best rule for comping your items is to be super specific, unless, however, he's right. He's right. However, if you get like a weird one-off, don't spend 2 hours saying I can't find the exact item, right? Sometimes we have to go to the next best similar item, but be as specific as you can. Yes.
Yeah, what I mean by that is if you pick up a pair of Nike shoes, just don't comp Nike shoes. Comp
Right.
Nike Air Force Ones, men's 7 blue,
Correct.
if that's what they are.
Because the size in clothing or shoes can throw off the price a lot.
And the color can make a big difference too.
Yeah,
Or
he's
in
right.
clothing, like a Levi's 501 jeans, if you just comp it at that, you're going to come back with like $24.
Mhm.
But if you comp it as a size 32 waist and a 36 inseam, it comes back at a 97% sell-through rate and $44 sale price. So
Yep.
completely different numbers, just
And
by being specific.
I see that in every category, Russell, when I'm helping people or when we're going through things where they think they comped it, then they realize it wasn't on the sold, it was on the listed. And I don't care what everybody in the whole entire universe lists their item for on eBay. If they're not selling it at that price, it doesn't make any difference to me. Let them sit on their items, let them think it's worth more. If it's not actively selling for that price, it doesn't make any difference to me what their price is. So so sell-through rates on our stores. I think it is important to have a sell-through rate goal on your store, and we're all going to have different ones. Most generally, really antique, ephemera, vintage type things that are harder to, they're going to have slower sell-through rates. So if our store is full of antiques, generally your store is going to have a slower sell-through rate than somebody that's doing, women's pants or something like that. So if you have an everything store, you can get an amazing sell-through rate. And Larry's a good example of that, the fact that if you're comping your items before you pick them up and looking at the sell-through rate, you have complete control over sell-through rate in your store. Granted, sometimes they're not going to sell like we thought they were, or maybe the market changes, things happen. But if you are comping things on the sell-through rate before you pick them up, you have control over this. So we're going to comp something, and I'm going to show you how I look at that. I found one of these today. It was really cool. That's why it's up. So give me something to look up, Russell.
Let's do something that nobody in here is really familiar with, and let's do a car part.
Okay.
Let's go with uh door handle for a 2010 Santa Fe.
So you can comp anything. You could be at the thrift store and you can find one of these, right? And you can look it up. Most generally, you can, if you need to narrow anything down, you can narrow it down on the left-hand side. So if it's an actual branded one, or if it's aftermarket, or you can narrow it down as much as you can. I would, because what if they only made like, I don't know, what if the left one was more rare than the right? We don't know, right? So narrow it down as good as you can. And then we want to look to see how many are listed. So right now we're going to pretend I narrowed it down really good, which I didn't, but also make sure I would do it by condition if it's a used item, because new and, let's go to used, because new and used are going to have vastly different results, right? So for used, we have 170 are listed right here in the upper left-hand corner. 170. So then we want to go and say, okay, well, how many of those 170 sold? 10. So what's the sell-through rate on that?
17%.
17%. And how did we get that, Russell? We divided,
The amounts, there's two ways to calculate it.
yep,
Quick and dirty way that we all kind of use is just take the sold divided by how many are listed. So in this case, it'd be 10 divided by 170. And then the multiply by 100, or just move the decimal point 2 places to the right. It's super easy to do it that way.
mhm,
So that way, but the official way would be add 10 plus 170 and then divide that by, or then divide 10 by the total of sold plus listed.
listed correct.
So that's actually the correct mathematical way of doing it.
That's right.
So if you look at like this right here, we notice it's 17%. If she puts that in Terapeak and it'll show the sell-through rate, it'll show the sell-through rate on Terapeak it'll be a different number because
It will be.
Terapeak adds both of those numbers together and then
Mhm.
does the calculation.
Mhm.
Because then the reason they do it that way is because there's 170 listed today, plus there was 10 sold over the last 90 days, so it was a total of 180 items were actually listed. It,
Yep.
it doesn't make that big of a difference on our end.
You happen to be standing in Goodwill and you're doing it quick, fast, and
Yep.
dirty. You can just do it the simple, because he's completely right, everything he said. You can just completely do the solds divided by the actives. Right, yes. That will give you your percent. So you have to decide, because you want to be in control of your store, what do I want my sell-through rate per item in my store be? And lots of times they're, really similar, but there's lots of people, successful people that I know that resell full time, that they try not to pick up anything that's under sometimes 100%. There's lots of people that say, I'm not picking up anything that has under 100%. It gets harder. Sourcing's harder. I think 75% is probably maybe a little bit more common. What's yours, Russell?
Actually for me, I just put it in the chat. It's completely different for me. I'm okay with picking up stuff that has a 40% sell-through rate or even a 30% sell-through rate if it's a 80 or $100 sell price item. Because with my buy cost being around $4 or $5 on average, for those type, or $10 for something I'd sell for 60 or 70.
Mhm.
If it has a 50% sell-through rate at $70, meaning it's going to take 80 to 180 days, theoretically, I could just drop the price to 40 and make less profit, but I could sell mine in a week or two.
Hmm.
So I can manipulate. However, if I'm doing the same thing, I'm paying $5 for a pair of jeans and it's selling for 25, you
You want it to
can't
move quicker.
you can't
Can't
manipulate
do it.
that price as much because your profit is such a small amount. So those have to be, the lower your sold price, the higher the sell-through rate needs to be.
Yep. So if your sold price is hovering in the, let's say $20-$25 range, your sell-through rate better be higher. Because what happens is then all of a sudden you have this store, just huge store that just keeps growing and growing and growing, and they're not moving. So can you explain to people what does it mean? Like just as a seller, to you, explain what that means. Like, so if you have a 15% sell-through rate store, what does that mean?
Oh, you're asking me? Oh, no problem. Basically it just means that if you got 1,000 items in your store and you got a 15% sell-through rate, then it's going to take 15,
About a year
100%
and a
is
half?
yeah, a year and a half, 2 years, or even longer. No, it's going to be closer to 3 years to sell every single item in your store.
Every single item, that's correct.
Can you say again how to figure out your store's sell-through rate?
The same exact way as you did an item. So take your,
Your
there
total
is an
items?
actual intricate formula that makes it more, because if you go, like, let's say into the app, which I'm doing right now, and I look at my actives versus my solds, those solds are going to include returns and they're going to include cancellations. So it's not an exact number.
And are
However,
you using sold so from the last 90 days?
yeah, so
or
like
the
if you pull it up on your app and you have your 90-day total, right under it, it'll say actives and orders.
Okay, so 90 days.
Right. And if you do it on the desktop, you're going to get a little bit different answer, because I do think it's a little bit more correct. But it is a different number, just a little bit.
And I also think the desktop is not only more accurate, but it's easier to calculate because you can run a report for a year, for
Mhm.
year to date, and you can look at it for the last, 9 months or 10 months, which gives you a lot better, more accurate data. And then you just take how many you currently have listed. And on that one, I would definitely add the listeds and solds together to get the total amount of listings you had up in the
Mm.
last X whatever amount of time frame you're doing, and use that as your listed number. So
Right.
if you have 1,000 sold for the year and you got, or 1,000 currently listed and 500 sold, your number would be 1,500 total listed. And then divide that by the 500 sold, or the 500 sold divided by 1,500 instead of 1,000 you currently have listed. And that'll give you your actual store sell-through rate. And you gotta
That's
remember,
correct.
if you're at 100%, that means you're selling every single item in your store in 90 days.
90 days. That's a 90-day turnover. So when I say that I want to have a minimum of a 6-month turnover, then that means I have to keep my solds at about half or better. Then my 90-day solds need to be half or better than my actives, basically. Yeah, you can fine tune it like he said, but I mean, it's an easy way to keep track of how you're doing. Is ideally, this doesn't mean it happens for everybody. Ideally, we all try to get to where our actives and solds are about the same. I mean, that would be great, right? It doesn't always happen. It doesn't mean you're failing if it's not. But before I upped my listing goal, I was always, I think we'd always called it nirvana, right? Like I'd always been where my actives and my solds, sometimes my solds were better than my actives. And so that was a good gauge just for me to glance at, because if you start seeing that number drop and you've always been up there, you need to know why, right? So then when I increased my listing goal, I noticed a pretty big shift. And I would be lying if I said it didn't freak me out, because I was so used to always having about the same number of active and solds that then when it started slipping, it really bothered me. But I knew it was because eBay needed to catch up. And it does get a little harder when you're listing more items. So like right now I have $1,160 or 1,160 orders and 2,114 actives. Ideally, I'd rather have my solds be in the 2,000 range. And it's getting better all the time. But Harry says, when you say you want a 6-month turnover, does that mean you want no items older than the 6 months in your store, or is an average? Average. I work everything on averages. So I take anything that's been in my store for a year and older, I take it out. Doesn't mean I'm chucking it in the garbage, but then that if I bring it back into my store, it comes back in as a brand new inventory item. So basically, usually what happens is when I pull those things every month on the 1st, I pull anything that's, been there a year. And usually it's crap. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. Usually I shouldn't have listed it in the first place. I don't even know why it's there. No, I don't. Absolutely, I do not delist, relist, because it didn't sell in a year. Nobody wanted it. It's my pictures were probably bad. My price was either like totally off. It usually isn't price if it's not there for a year. It's usually just you shouldn't have listed it. It's probably something that's worth $5 and I was 115 or 20, because that's another trap you can fall into with metrics that I had happen to me. Totally screwed up my sales for a while. I got into this mindset if I don't list anything under $20, I just don't. Well, then I was listing things that probably were $15 items that I was asking 20, because I don't list for things under 20, right? So like I was manipulating my prices to be what I wanted things to sell for, not really what they do sell for. And that's a dangerous trap to get into, and it really messed my sales up for a while. So I'm not a delist, relist girl. I realize I have all these people tell me, but when I do it, I get sales. That's great. I want my listings to be correct. That doesn't count. It's not the same as when you go and you make, when you're bettering your listing. That's different. That's not just delist, relist. You're bettering your listing. Laura says she has a lot in the death pile, and should I do cheap to get rid of and sell through rate better? That's up to you, Laura. That's the exact same scenarios when I get a big, huge jewelry lot and I could list a whole bunch of stuff for $15, but is it worth my time? It's really not. So I lot it up. So am I getting every penny out of that inventory? I'm not, but I'm okay with that because I want to move down the road. So that's how, like Russell said, he can manipulate his pricing, he can manipulate his sales a little bit. And Megan and I were having that conversation yesterday. If you're pricing things correctly, or even if you're overshooting things just a little bit, I I could like, I force sales sometimes, I guess is the correct term it would be. I force sales as far as, you know, like if I need some money, I'm just gonna be honest. If I need some money and I haven't made very good sales this week, I'll go to some of my high dollar items, I'll manipulate the price and I'll force the sale. And I know it'll sell. I don't drop it by like $100, but like you get to know your store and your items and your customers, and you'll be able to manipulate those prices. Harry said after a lot of messing with, I think D-list, relist is about the same. Yeah, I just don't advocate it, Harry, because then people do it instead of creating new listings. And I don't like that. You know,
Last
I
week,
don't.
last week,
I
Carrie,
don't.
when you were away, and
Mhm.
one of the calls I filled in for,
Yeah.
we went through the traffic listing report,
Mhm.
and we did mine, and it was interesting that I had 66 items in my store currently that in the last 90 days have had 0 page views at all.
Mhm.
And I think, that's a great metric versus just going off like when you're doing your sales or doing any kind of, you know, everybody always goes, I take my oldest stuff and I redo it, which is probably accurate. But if you look at that traffic listing report,
Mhm.
a lot of that stuff's not really that old, and it could only be like 2 views or 4 views, and it could be a North Face puffer jacket in a great size and a great color and whatever. And 3 months later, you've got like five people looked at it, and you know that it's season, so why did only 5 people look at it? And it just kind of triggers that. Do I need to mark the price down? Do I need to change something? And you know,
And you
and
can sort your listings by views. You do need to remember though, you know, they reset like you said, but you can go on the traffic listing report and then sort by views. And I do that because sometimes it's like, I don't know, I just want to know what's not getting any traction at all. Or I sort by watchers. So if you have items that have tons of watchers on them for like, you know, a couple months and you keep getting watchers but no buyers, what's the problem usually?
and
Your
the
price too high.
discussion, yeah, the discussion we had was in 3 months, I've got 66 items that have 0 page views at all. That's probably not a good thing.
Mm-mm.
But I also had one item that in the last 90 days had like 900 page views, and I still own it.
Mhm.
Is that a bigger problem?
Yeah, because there's something about your listing that they're clicking into it
Yep.
and then they're backing out of it. So is it like, you know, there's a reason why then they don't pull the trigger.
Yep.
It
So,
happens to all of us. I mean,
yeah.
but I
Well,
do
no,
look at,
yeah, my point is we should all just know that it's there and it's easy to
Mhm.
get to. And you should really just take advantage of all the stuff that eBay gives us to look at your listings from every angle and go, and you know what? I personally think anything that's old and hasn't sold is either one, it's a crappy item, meaning it's got a bad sell-through rate to begin with. It's oversaturated, whatever that metric is. It's a pricing issue, it's a title issue, it's a photo issue. Because you got to remember, like 65 or 70% of all sales happen on the mobile app. And the
Mhm.
first thing they see is a photo. You can't really see the title as much when they're doing a search. So
And
your
they scroll.
photos, yep, and as they're scrolling, that photo's got to catch their eye.
Yep. So if your picture's this big in that big square, they're scrolling on by usually. And you know, the pushback on the D-list relist too is I like having that original list date. I just do. It's me. Lots of people don't care. And if you don't care, that's fine too. Just don't use the D-list relist in exchange for putting up new listings. Can it work? Probably. Is it good practice? No. Just me. I'm not saying you're wrong if you do it. I would rather preach that we don't. Um,
So
the
question, Carrie,
yeah.
if you're removing, well, let's say you remove 100 items a month out of your, from old stuff that didn't sell and you just remove it completely, doesn't that alter your actual sell-through rate of your store?
I don't ever have that many. So I don't really know. It could. It could.
Well,
Um,
I'm just saying, like right now, I've got 550 items or something in my store, and I got, 500 sold. So I'm at 100%. Perfect. But if I take out the 300 old stuff I have, now I'm at a 600, 250% sell-through rate
right.
for my store.
It
How
doesn't
amazing,
take it long to
I'm just saying, I know, but how amazing is my store now?
correct. You can
So
manipulate lots of numbers on eBay. Just like there's people that have amazing ASPs and they're losing money. And I cannot get people to understand that. The ASP number on eBay is not a good indicator of how well you're doing in your business. I know a lot of people with $50 ASPs that are losing their butt and they have no idea that they are. And it's like, well, but I have a high ASP. But if you're not turning over items, you're paying too much. If your items are, if you have 5,000 items and you only sold 10, who cares about a $50 ASP? There's just so many factors. And same way with that sales total. So is it a good indicator for yourself? It is, because I know if mine starts really dropping. However, if mine drops $2,000 today, am I going to freak out? No, it just means a really high-end item fell off, or a few of them fell off. It doesn't mean that I'm crashing the business, right? So the net profit numbers are what's really important. And there are people, I'm telling you, that are so successful on eBay that are selling cheap items, right? They are turning over volume. So we all have to find that happy medium where it sounds awesome to cherry pick the high end stuff and only buy high end stuff and make those huge margins. But then if we only sell one every 90 days, it's not going to pay our bills either. And then between turning over cheap stuff where we're having to ship out 200 items a day to make any money, we have to find that happy medium. And only you know what works best for you. Unfortunately, when you start getting into the full-time scenario, unless you're in a position where you have high sell-through rate items at high prices, which is awesome, and I'd love everybody to do that. And oftentimes those high rate sell-through items and high priced items also takes a lot of capital up front. So we have to be careful about getting our money back in enough time. We have to generate cash flow. If we're not generating enough cash flow, then we have a problem too. So unfortunately, I would say in lots of categories, if you want to be full-time, we start talking about being a volume game, right? That doesn't mean cheap volume game, but you better be turning over a lot of items or it gets really hard to make it. Cherry picking and the great items, that's always amazing. Stacia's a really good example of, she does that very well. She has great net profit numbers. She knows her numbers inside and out. She just picks up the really good stuff and she turns it over. So she is a good example that can absolutely work, but not everybody can. It also seems that items listed for a long time with little traffic somehow slows. It does. So that's a good point, Harry. I absolutely am a believer in that. If you have, say, a 10,000 item store and 5,000 items have been in there for years and they're not great items anyway, and you're like, well, I already did the work. I'm going to leave them there. That is definitely slowing your store down because it's like an anchor on your store. I absolutely believe that. Now, Russell's right. If I take out that 5,000 items, wow, your sell-through rate's going to look amazing for a while, right? It just is. And if you want to feel amazing for a while about it, you do that. But it's going to manipulate that for a while. It's no different than the other direction. And I hadn't really thought about that. When I really increased my listings, my sell-through rate really went the other way because I was pumping more items in mine, and it's taken eBay literally months to figure out what I'm doing. And people they increase their listing goal and they expect a magical thing to happen right away. It just really doesn't work that way. I can't explain why, but it really doesn't. It's taken eBay a while to catch up to me, and we're still not there, obviously. That's right, Harry. Manipulating your numbers makes you feel good, but it doesn't really mean anything. So I'm going to tell you, I have lots of people who've been with me for quite a while that set their metrics. They talk about their metrics. They say, I'm only picking up stuff worth this. And I hear a lot of people say, but my time is valuable, which it totally is. Your time is super valuable. And I'm not working for less than this, but then we run their numbers and it's like you're net profiting hardly anything. So just know those numbers. But we also then make excuses for ourselves. And I am guilty of doing this in the past and probably once in a while now and in the future. But how often do we find ourselves saying, yeah, but I can pick that up because everybody needs bread and butter in their store. So my metric might be $30 profit, but everybody needs to fill their store with some bread and butter, right? That's fine, but then just know you're lying to yourself with your metric. So it's totally fine that you're doing that. There's nothing wrong with it. But don't lie to yourself and say, I'm only picking up $30 profit items if you're really not, because then it doesn't help you either. Russell says at the end of the day, the only number that matters is how much is deposited into your bank account. All the other numbers are just indicators of how good. Yep, absolutely. There's people with really large stores that aren't making any money or very slow money. A good exercise to do. There's a lot of people that sell a lot of items have big stores, sell a lot of items, and they go, I don't have any money. And we can always figure it out. It's not hard to pinpoint. But a lot of times it is how much we're pumping into our business every day. So if you put in $200 worth of items in a day, like listed valued items, and how many of us are going to get 100% of that? Not very many. Like, we're going to take an offer, it's going to go on sale, we might have a coupon, whatever. But you need to be listing, I always say, at least twice as much money per day as what you expect to get out of it. And that's probably a little light, actually. But if I expect eBay to kick off 200 bucks for me a day, if I don't have a high sell-through rate, I mean, think of how much dollars I need to list per day, right? So if I have 100% sell-through rate, that works. If I'm saying I want eBay to give me a $500 paycheck a day, I might be able to make putting in $500, $700 a day if I have 100% sell-through rate. But if you start lowering that sell-through rate and you start figuring out, I'm only going to turn my store over, it's going to take me 2 years to sell these items, because anything under a 15% sell-through rate in a store, you're looking at a couple years to sell those items. And if you're only listing $500 to $600 a day, and it takes a couple years to sell, figure out that sell-through rate and how many dollars you can expect over the course of 90 days, a year, 2 years. It's not much. So a lot of people are expecting eBay to kick off stuff to them that's never going to happen. How the other numbers just help you understand how to increase the deposit number. Yep, that's all we're doing. That's why it doesn't necessarily matter, but one number I do track on a paper calendar, I just pitch it in the corner, is my payout number. Because even though that's not a big picture of my business, that is an important number. Now if I'm overpaying for my items, I could have huge payouts and it wouldn't matter. I'd still be losing money. But it's a number I like to track. It's what's going into my bank account.
One of the things I like to do, Carrie, with that sales calculator
Mhm.
is it's an eye-opening experience, and it's a little deflating for a lot of people, myself included sometimes.
Yep, me
I'll
too.
put in what my average sale price is, my average shipping and all that stuff is, and my average cost of goods. And then on the left hand, if you go down a couple and you just type in number of orders and you put, I want to sell 1,000 items this year, and it'll tell you what you're totally going to make on 1,000 items at that price point. And it's like, wow, I get,
Ew.
or if I do 5 listings or 10 listings a day, and I got a 50% sell-through rate, which means it's going to take like 6 months to a year to turn over.
Yep.
10 items a day for 365 days is 3,650 items. That's a lot of work when you look at it
Yep.
from the big number. But then when you plug that number in, you go, oh, that's only going to give me $28,000. I need to make changes on my pricing, my buy costs. It's a really good eye opener to go, I really need to figure out why or how to
Especially if
make
you're
that
listing a whole lot of $20 items.
number. Yeah.
You're doing a lot of work and you're never say never, but if you're not turning over huge volume, it doesn't work. It does not work. And that's with a high sell-through rate. It's still hard. It's hard, and let alone if you get into under 50% sell-through rate and you're listing a bunch of $20 items, you're going to be really disappointed. And that's just the way it is. You're going to be really disappointed.
Or if you take your goal for the year, what you're wanting to do, and then figure out roughly add like 40% for taxes to that sales number or that profit number. Or, and you just calculate it out and go, if I want to make 100K, I need to sell about 170 on average to make 100 and, to make like 80,000 in my bank account after taxes.
And then you got to buy inventory.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Right. So it's all going to come out, but if you figure you're going to need about 200,000 to make 100K in your bank account, 200,000 divided by your $20 is 10,000 items.
Yep.
10,000 items divided by 365 days is, 40, 50 a day you got to do.
Yep.
Or,
and I think I did the calculator. I think it was like 205 to net 100.
yeah.
Yep.
But when you work your numbers backwards and see what you got to do, it really quickly makes you go, you know what? I can either list 10,000 pairs of, pairs or shirts for $20, or I could figure out which shirts I can get that are $40 and I only gotta do 5,000.
And have a fast sell-through rate or a
Yeah.
better sell-through rate. Because if you put a whole bunch of items in your store that have a slow sell-through rate, even if they're all $40 profit items, it's still rough. That sell-through rate's super important. And your sell-through rate in your store too is so influenced by lots of things. If you have a lot of regular customers, repeat customers that shop all the time, that really does help your store sell-through rate. And that's where it's like for followers. It also depends on what category you're in. If you're in one-offs, Larry probably doesn't get a whole bunch of repeat multi-order customers, right? And that's not Larry's fault. That's just the category he's in. So it just depends on your category. But like with me, that's like a huge goal of mine. I try to cultivate those multi-orders and those repeat customers because of the fact that, you know, that's one thing in my niche I can do to improve myself. But as a coach and as an individualized coach with people, my biggest frustrating thing is exactly what Russell just said, is we can't say I'm going to net $100,000, but I'm going to list 10 items a day at 20 bucks. It does at a 50% sell-through rate. It's not ever going to work. So that's so frustrating for me when I'm like, but I'm showing it to you. This isn't going to work. And then they'll be mad saying, well, how do I get more sales? Because your numbers didn't work to begin with. And it's frustrating for everybody. You know, it's frustrating for, but once you know it and you get these numbers down and you're comfortable with them, sometimes it is a disappointment. Like Russell said, sometimes it's like, wow, that's a bummer. Then you can fix it. And if we're not looking at the numbers, chewing on the numbers, really just getting comfortable with them, we don't know if it's going to work. And then we're just kind of blindly leading. And once in a while, you'll get something really amazing. And then it makes you feel like, well, my whole store could be this way. Don't dilute yourself that way either. Like we all get lucky sometimes. That's what your averages is. Average. So I just really want everybody to think about that. But yeah, the other then we get the other excuses, but I can't find the good stuff. It's not out there. I can't find it. It's not my area. I don't know, guys. We all have the internet, and we can't be buying junk and putting junk in our store because we don't have a great local flea market, or because, you know, I have crap for sourcing, guys. Like, you come source the middle of Iowa unless you're selling Carhartts and boots, and I mean, there's probably some good stuff, but I'm saying, like, for jewelry, it's not great. Once in a while, I'll get a good haul, but those good hauls don't just fall in my lap. I am constantly making relationships. I'm putting myself out there. I work really hard to get those big deals, but most of my stuff comes from online where you guys can find the exact same stuff. I get a lot of stuff on eBay. I get a lot of stuff on Facebook. I get a lot of, so don't tell me when I'm trying to help you that, well, I can't find it.
And I found too that, like, I put on, there was a thread on Reddit that was about jewelry, and I just said, hey, you guys are sharing sources for buying jewelry for yourselves. Does anybody have good sources for if I'm reselling jewelry? And there were a couple auction sites that I hadn't heard of that somebody mentioned. So I'll go check those out now. But, you know, and I've now expanded the auction sites I look at online to any state. They can ship it.
Sure. Yep. And you'll get to know the ones that are going to screw you, and then you just don't do business with them again. That's all you can do, you know, because it happens to me too. Harry says, in my opinion, the bread and butter should just fill the capacity that it can't fill up with amazing items. That's right, but we still have to have metrics for the bread and butter, and it shouldn't just be crap. And so many times it's just not good, and we just shouldn't. Don't list things just to be listing them. Just don't list anything instead of putting in stuff. You know, if you wouldn't be, this was a metric I started to use, and I'm trying to follow it really well. Is if I'm not like holding the item in my hand, get ready to list it, and I'm not like, not maybe, I don't have to be thrilled about it, but if I'm not a little excited to put it in there, or I'm not like confident in that item, I don't put it in my store. Not by itself anyway. I'll probably put it in a little lot. But we shouldn't just be adding stuff in that we don't really like because it came in a lot, or because, you know, I have it on hand. Like, don't fill your store up full of stuff that shouldn't be there because you haven't done your job sourcing. And yes, I'm saying that because Tech has said that we should spend more time sourcing per day than we do listing or photography. If we aren't finding the stuff, some of us are going to have an easier time than others. But sourcing well takes a lot of time. So if we are just sourcing once a week and we're complaining, That doesn't cut it. Sourcing, if some people have honey holes, and good for them, that's awesome. If you don't have a honey hole and you get caught in that cycle of I rely on one or two places, and if they don't have good stuff, well, I just list crap, then you got to look somewhere else. And do you think I love scrolling every freaking state in the country for jewelry on Facebook? No, I don't. I don't like dealing with people on Facebook. But sometimes when I can't find anything good locally, I gotta go where I can find it. And it's not here lots of times. Or sometimes I have to get in the car and go a couple hours. And sometimes it gets hard and we have to, as we get better in our niche, sometimes I have to go to antique malls, and I don't love antique malls, but I gotta catch those slip-in places, right? I gotta try to catch them. And it's tedious and it's hard and it kind of sucks. But
And
with
I
this,
learned, having been low on inventory lately, that my instinct then is to overpay for what I find, because I need some inventory. I need to get something listed, and so you kind of run the risk of that too. So you should always be like, you have
you're
tons of jewelry, but you're still sourcing, because you should.
yeah, and most of the time I'm not like, so I found a decent auction the other day and I showed it to Catherine. Normally it would be an auction I'd go after, but because I'm trying to back off sourcing right now, so I'm not looking for it, right? But that guy in Texas just keeps every day he's sending me a lot of jewelry. I'm not gonna tell him no, right? Because it turns out he's just been a hoarder his whole life and his wife told him to get rid of it. And so that I'm just getting a great deal and he just wants it gone. He's getting a good deal. I'm getting a good deal. I'm not going to tell him no. So while I'm not looking for it, I'm not turning it down if it knocks on my door. But I totally agree with Catherine. When you go to get low, especially when it's something it's feast or famine sometimes, you also maybe buy things you shouldn't. Um, so I feel like you should in your head, maybe think, if I'm getting ready to list this item and Carrie's looking over my shoulder and she's seeing this item I put in my store, is she gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you listing that? Don't put it in your store, right? Just think about whoever your mentor is in your category and you're putting it in your store and you're not proud of it to be in your store. Don't put it there, right? And if that means you can only list 5 amazing items a day, in my opinion, 5 amazing items is a whole lot better than 5 amazing items and 5 pieces of junk. It's my opinion. I think we've all gone there. We've all done it. And then we have to go back and fix it. And it's not fun. Yeah, Becky.
Yeah, this kind of goes into a question that I've been having mill around in my head. I am a clothing seller. However, I have a lot of books from the genre of like homeschool world stuff. And homeschool books have a very good resale ability, especially on platforms like eBay. And so I want to list them, but I'm predominantly clothing. So I don't want to just not list clothing and start listing all books. So is it, for my metrics sake, is it okay to kind of mingle them both into the same store? Do both?
I believe so.
What's your advice on that?
Yeah, I would keep listing clothes because there's something about eBay that like I didn't have any good bracelets for a while. And you know what happened? I quit selling bracelets. I don't know. I don't get it. I feel like it kind of needs to be, I don't know. But I would keep listing clothes and then maybe make the books your that's your bonus. The books are your bonus. So I would keep doing the clothes to move your clothes, but then make that your bonus money. You know, that's like your cherry on top money. Hey Larry, check your messages quick, would you please? You'll want to before I log off and lose it.
He accidentally.
I know I sent it to him, but I didn't want to log off and have it where you couldn't get it.
Okay. And I'm gonna send you what he said because I just retyped it. So that's what he was trying to say to the group, but he accidentally
got it. Awesome.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I just didn't want you to lose it when I log off. I've totally done that. Yep, Harry says 100% if he's not listing his music items every day, the instrument sells slow. It's totally true. And in jewelry, I know it's kind of weird like that too. And maybe it is with clothes too. I used to think it was just category, that big category. But boy, if I quit listing if I don't list a bracelet for a couple days, my bracelet sales really slow. I don't know. It's an eBay thing, I think. But just yes, if your mentor is looking over your shoulder and you wouldn't be happy to show them Doesn't mean it has to be a banger every time. But if you'd be like, I really wouldn't want them to see this, maybe you shouldn't be listing it. And that whole squeezing every dollar out of every item. And I said it the other day, but that is one of the biggest home run things tech ever taught me was I'd rather buy things and pay more for just what I want than to pay less and get more, but the crap's in there. And to me, that means the same as if I get a big lot, I need to take out where my money is and what needs to be in my store and be okay letting the rest go. I gotta let it go. And we all gotta have a let it go strategy. Because I think sometimes we list stuff just because like that's like, oh, I already bought it. And we also leave stuff in our store that shouldn't be there because well, I already did the work. Yep, you did, and we shouldn't have done it, and we need to get it out.
I think the other thing too with that's on that same line, Carrie, is you have to look at your listing goal, your daily goal, as
Mhm.
as what it is. If you have a listing goal of 10, but you're only good enough to source 5,
Mhm.
don't buy 5 more garbage items just to make
Yep.
that 10 number.
Absolutely. If I'm running low on inventory, and if I ran out of jewelry and I didn't have any good stuff, but I had my lot box, am I pulling out of that lot box to make my listing goal? I'm not. I'm just
Yeah,
not listing that many that day.
I got caught up in that mess a few years ago because they were so busy promoting, get listings on, get listings on, get listings on. So, and they weren't at that time saying don't put bad listings on. And
Right?
I thought it was good. So I got a whole bunch of crap I got to get rid of. So just
You and
FYI.
everybody else, right? I mean, it's happened to everybody. I guarantee you we've all done it, especially when we started. Because it's like we got to meet that listing goal. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, I'd much rather you come and say, I know I list 10 a day, but I got down to where I didn't have 10 good items. Now I listed 5. And I'd say, good for you. Way to make that good decision. It's the same as when people show like, I didn't find anything at Goodwill. I went to 10 Goodwills and didn't come out with anything. That's awesome. Because that means you weren't buying crap just to be meeting your metrics, your goals, right? Because if we're buying stuff just to meet our listing goals and they're not the right things, we shouldn't have bought them anyway.
Well,
So
when
it's
you were
hard.
doing boot camp the other day, I was getting ready to put some stuff up. I said, nope, I threw them in the go back to donation pile. So I'm just trying to get that in my head. So all these
Yep.
clothes, I'm just throwing them to the donation pile. So I said, Carrie's in my head, finally getting through. Because I
Hey,
brought it. I want to put it up. I put the work into it, but yeah.
that's probably true, Harry. But um, however, I'm telling you, the prices are so ridiculous that you never know about that either. And that's it too. Then I hear, but it's so expensive. I can't find the good stuff because it's too much. Well, we got to just keep looking. And eventually you find what's best for you for sourcing. But we do have to sometimes, like with jewelry, as I've gotten better in my niche, it's sure a lot harder to find that good stuff. It just is. But you know what? This business is hard. It's not an easy business. Hard. Like Russell said, when all of a sudden you're looking, you're like, oh, I have to list 10,000 items to meet my income goal. It's hard. And so it's just it just is. That's why I said in boot camp, like, if you're looking for like the special answer that's gonna make this easy, I don't have it. It's a lot of work. And like I'm a huge, and everybody's gonna come after me for this. I hate like so for me, pallet buying would be a rough go, right? Unless you had like a brick and mortar where you could filter all the stuff that's not eBayable, then it probably works. But if you're strictly eBay, pallet buying would be rough. The special answer is consistency. That is correct. All right. Well, I'm off. It's the end of our week, but we'll see you again on Monday. And hopefully you can join us.